Now that gives the Reavers their second glory point, and I'm going to go ahead and at the start of the card play phase spend that, and I'm going to add this +1 damage to all attack actions with a range 1 or 2. We're going to go ahead and equip that onto our leader. So we went ahead and tucked that under him. So I've been kind of debating what the Stormcast player can do. They're actually going to play this card here in response. Choose an enemy fighter and push them 1 hex in any direction. So what you can see is we're going to take and move this fella here. So now he's going to be able to be charged in the following activation. And that's all the card play that's going to happen. So we're just going to go right into the Stormcast turn. And I kind of debated here, but I am going to actually do a charge. Just going to go 1, 2, 3. He's going to make a charge action, which is going to kind of deactivate him. So in this case, we're going to get 2. We're looking for hammers against 1 defense. Oh, look at that. We got 2 hammers, but he got a crit on defense. So that is a huge bummer for the Stormcast, because the tables have kind of turned. The end of the first round, they were kind of looking pretty good. They were in the lead. Now they're down to just the 1 fella here. If that attack had succeeded, it would have killed this guy. So it would have been 2 to 1, a little bit more favorable odds. But that's going to be a giant piece of sucktown for the Stormcast, because now this guy's just going to be able to attack and attack and attack. But we'll see how it goes. Now we don't really have any opportunity for card play, so we'll go right into the second activation for the Reavers here, and obviously he's just going to attack because there's nothing he can do to respond there. So now he's got the 3 attacks on the 1 defense die. Now, since he's been upgraded, he has a special ability now, which allows him to target all adjacent enemies, but this is the only enemy that's adjacent. So we're going to go ahead and roll here, and the Stormcast player is going to pray to Sigmar, I guess. So, well, he was looking for swords, which he did not get any of. There's no support. This is a dodge, doesn't matter. Unfortunately, it would have been nice if he rolled a shield, because then he could level up, because remember, when a Stormcast player rolls a shield or a crit on defense, but none of that happened. The attack is a wash, though, since there were no successes. There's not going to be any kind of knockback or push. I should say push. So that was the Reaver's second activation. There's not going to be any card play. So we're going to go into the Stormcast second activation, and they are actually just going to draw a power card off of the deck. And this is good. This is an upgrade. So now we're going to go right into the card play. Let's see, what's this do? Roll an extra attack dice if there are no adjacent friendly fighters, but this is restricted to Oberyn, who is dead. So we drew that, which is kind of worthless. So jumping back over to the Reaver's activation, they're just going to go ahead and do that same attack. See what happens. Looking for swords. Okay, we got a crit, but we blocked it with a crit there. So crit on crit is going to cancel each other out. That's very good for the Stormcast, because again, they are now going to get able to upgrade here. So now they've got another attack there, and you can see now they're rolling 2 defense dice, which is, well, based on how he's been rolling prior to this roll, not really that important, but it probably should be important. We'll see how he rolls. So no card play. We're going to go ahead and just draw a power card. I'm relatively happy with the objective cards for the Stormcast. They might be a little bit better, but let's see what power card this is. So greater strength, +1 damage to all attack actions with a range of 2. So we're going to move right into the card play phase, and he's going to spend 1 of his 2 remaining glory points he hasn't spent and equip this. So this may come in handy. You can see he's got 2 attacks now. He's got a 3 damage attack and a 2 damage attack. Now the 2 damage attack, you can see the text there, you get to hit all the adjacent enemies. So this is going to give +1 damage to both of these. So you can do a straight up 4 damage, which is good because the Reaver's leader does have 4 hit points. It's the more beefy of the Reaver characters. So this is going to come in handy here. Now I realize I did make a little bit of a tactical mistake on the last activation for the Blood Reaver. So I realized I did make a little bit of a tactical error on the last activation for the Blood Reaver. I feel like I was kind of juggling, both sides here and working the cameras. What I should have done is actually had him make a charge move here, like so, and then do an attack instead, and then had this guy come up and then do an attack there. So I think just for purposes of kind of a strategic discussion, I'm going to pretend I did that and was paying more attention to what was going on in terms of what, the blue player is just going to be drawing cards. I didn't really have any reason to not do this, because I do have a card here that's going to allow me to score that objective. There's nothing he can do to push me off. So let's say I made the charge instead of just doing a normal attack. It failed like we rolled. But now on this turn, he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's going to do a charge there. Now he's going to get the added support of that. That's what I should have done, and I'm just going to go ahead and say a little bit of takesy-backsy there and do that. So he's going to charge and do an attack there. So he does have a 3 dice attack, and it's going to do 2 damage against a 2 dice now defense, because remember he got up, the Stormcast got upgraded. Now he's also going to be able to get support because we've got the support character there adjacent. So we'll go ahead and roll these off. He's looking for swords, and let's see, he got 1 crit. None of the support mattered. He did get a shield, which isn't enough to block the crit because the crit's going to override that, and his support is worthless. So that's enough for a 2 damage attack there on the Stormcast. So he's half dead there. We've got 2 damage, so it's not looking so great here for the Stormcast. Now he's got 1 more activation, and he's going to go ahead and draw now a new card. This is Right to Strike. This can be equipped onto Bright Shield, which is not this character, so this is too bad here. However, he's going to play a card here on this last activation. It says choose 2 fighters that are adjacent to each other and switch them, because it was probably relatively obvious he was going for that objective. So he's going to play that card just to switch him off of that and keep him from scoring it. So the only objective scored here is actually going to be for the Reavers, which is another reason I did the takesy backsy. Score this immediately if 3 or more of your fighters made a charge in the action phase. So they got their 3rd glory point at this point. A little bit of cheating there, but we'll call it good. And that was the only objective that was possible to be scored, unfortunately for the Stormcast. So in the cleanup phase, we'll go ahead and clear these markers off of the different characters. And then we're also going to try to maybe exchange our hand for some better power cards and objective cards. So the Stormcast player is going to discard 4 of their power cards and 2 of their action or objective cards here, and then draw back up to 5 and 3 respectively. And the Reaver player is going to discard all 4 of the action cards they have right now. They're going to keep the 2 objectives that they do have, which are pretty good, and then just draw 1 more of those, and then draw back up to 5 power cards. And it is worth noting, if you do run out of cards in the deck, then that's it, you're done for the game. I do have the discard piles under here, so these decks look a little bit bigger than they actually are. Okay, we're going to go into the last round for the all-important initiative roll-off here. Now, it might have seemed like, the Stormcast were on the ropes, and they were, but the real failure there was that one attack where he moved in and tried to attack this fella. If that had succeeded, and the odds are that it should have, give or take, then it would have been a very different situation. The Stormcast still would have been in relatively decent shape. But let's go ahead and do the initiative roll for the last round. This is going to be Stormcast first, and they got 1 crit here. Now 2, the Blood Reavers, and they got no crits. So Stormcast obviously is going to go first, and this is very opportune because if they can attack and kill one of these guys and then live through the counter attack and then kill the other one, they'll have killed 2, and then possibly, we'll see how it shakes out. But they don't have to charge or do any movement here, so they can feasibly get off 2 kills here. Now he is going to attack this fella here. He has a little bit less hit points. The amount of damage that either of them are going to do is going to be the same, and they both get the same number of attacks back. So we'll go ahead and roll up here 2 attacks to the 1 defense, looking for shields and dodges in the case of the defense. Oh, there we go. So we got 2 crits. Those are going to cancel each other out, but he did get a hammer, so that is going to break through even though he rolled a crit. So that is enough to pluck that model off the board, and that's enough for a 4th glory point there. Now he's not going to spend this for an upgrade just yet. However, he is going to play now on his card play phase. This one here says enemy fighters cannot support the target of the first attack and the next activation. So this is going to negate any support that may happen on the Reaver's following turn. So the Reaver player is going to respond here, and they have Frenzy, and this allows them to equip this. It says roll an extra dice when the fighter makes a charge action. And we're going to go ahead and equip this on our leader because we are going to charge with him on the next activation there. So now he's got 2 of these here that he's equipped with. And that's all the cards we're going to play for the Reaver. There are some that I could have played, but I'm not going to play. Now, as I said, the leader here is going to charge the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they all have a movement of 5 now. He's going to charge there. That is going to lock him down, but this guy's still kind of free floating, and then he's going to do an attack. Now this cannot support that attack. That's okay because we've already beefed up his charge. So now we've got, instead of 2 dice, we're rolling 3 dice, looking for hammers in this case, against 2 of these looking for shields. So we did get 1 hammer, but we got 2 crits blocking that off. So they were not able to get that through. The Stormcast rolling has definitely turned a corner here. So this was actually a very tactical mistake here in terms of the Reaver player moving in here. Because now he's charged. He is now dead in the water for the remainder of this round, the remainder of the game. He's got 4 hit points. He's got a little bit better of attack. He's only got 3 hit points here. Now, this Stormcast player, he's got a whirlwind attack. Normally it only does 2 damage, 1, 2, but if you remember, he has now an upgrade card that adds +1 damage. So you can see his normal damage is 4, and then his whirlwind attack there, that is now up to a 3. So because of that, he's able now to do the whirlwind attack, and so for 1 activation, he's able to do 2 attacks at once, and possibly take him out, and then take him out on a second attack. Like that, instead of maybe wasting, more activations, depending on how the dice roll works. But that was actually a very tactical error in terms of this player. This guy should have done the charge, maybe just move 1 spot over, got it in there, and then this guy could have come in. So it's possible that we've now lost 1 opportunity to attack here with the Reaver player. So we're going to do our first attack. We are going to do the spin attack. This is going to do 3 damage. First we'll do it on this fella here and then that fella. So we're going to roll this, looking for hammers and dodges. So hammer and dodge, they cancel each other out. So that's a miss. Now we're going to do the other one. And remember, they are supporting each other as well on defense, so that can also work. And so we got nothing there. So either way, now Stormcast is back to its normal rolling. That was a complete whiff. And there's no card play. We're going to go back to Karsus here. He's there. Now if he gets this attack off, he's going to do 2 damage, and that is enough to kill the Stormcast. Now he's looking for swords, and then he's, of course, actually has a second defense die. They're looking for shields or crits. So, okay, these are double supports. So he's only supported by 1, so it doesn't count. He got a hammer, which is nothing, and he got 2 shields, so he would have blocked it all together there. So that's a failure now. Again, no card play. Now we're going back to the whirlwind attack as well. So we're going to go, again, this guy and then this guy. These are doing 3 damage each. So hammers and dodges. So we got a hammer, but the crit blocks it. And now we're going to the boss. And nothing and nothing there. So we're in a little bit of a roll-off here. So we're going back to the 3rd activation for the Khorne player there, 3 on 2. And let's see, he got all kinds of goodness there. So he got 1 crit, which is enough, and so that's going to actually kill the Stormcast player. So he's going to come off the board. That's going to give us the 4th glory point, and now it's a tie, 4-4. So even though we've wiped out the other team here, each player still has an activation. You do play out the rest of the game, because it is possible to wipe out the other team and still lose, and I've definitely seen that happen. Now, in the case of the Stormcast player, their last activation is going to be to discard this card, hold objective 2, draw their last remaining objective card, and this is hold objective 5, so it's worthless as well. So the Stormcast player isn't going to score any more objectives. They don't have anything they can actually do. However, for the last activation for the Reaver player, he did have this ability as well for his last activation to move on to there, and he does have that objective. He also had a card to allow him to swap places as well, so he was pretty okay. So it is tied 4-4. Unfortunately for the Heroes of Sigmar, the Khorne players are going to be able to score that. They get a point for holding objective 4. They get 5 points for holding the Annihilation to remove all enemy fighters in the game, and then score this in an end phase if 5 or more fighters are out of action, and right now there are 6 fighters out of action. So we drew up into all of those cards, which gave us an additional, 8 points there at the end of the game. So they were doing pretty well there. Now if you kind of reverse that a little bit, these 6 points here, if the Stormcast was able to hold on, would not have happened, and they would have gotten these 2 points though for that, so it would have been 6-4 at that point. And it's likely that we might have scored these extra 2, so it could have been even a tie there. If that was a tie, you'll look and see if somebody was wiped out, then the other team wins. Then you'll see who's controlling actually the most objectives. So even if you don't have necessarily a card that lets you hold an objective, it might behoove you, if the game's really tight, to grab an objective to act as a tiebreaker. But that's pretty much the game. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed the playthrough of Shadespire. I've really enjoyed this game quite a bit. I'm actually very surprised at kind of the amount of depth that's in this game. Now, this is the 4th play that I've done of the game, and they've played out very differently each time that I've played it. And I think really the core crux of the game is the deck building of the objective cards and the power cards, but more so the objective cards, because You've got exactly 12 cards. You can't duplicate the cards. You can't duplicate the power cards either, for that matter. And so you've got different things that you can try to go for. Now, if you stuck through the playthrough, I kind of talked through some of the decisions that I made in terms of like, hey, this is an objective I can easily score in the next round, but it's only going to give me 1 point. It's going to kind of pull me further from the action, which I would be able to score a lot more points with this other objective at the end of the game if I forsook that objective, the easy point, and kind of went for it. So there's a little bit of kind of press your luck, which is very indicative of most of Games Workshop games. It's like, okay, this is going to be a much bigger payoff. I've got to go for it. The dice have to be in my favor, but if I just hang back and I just get the 1 point, I'm almost ensuring that I don't win because I'm taking the easy road. So that's a lot of that decision making is really going to come to fruition. There's a lot of things I really like about this game, and it does a lot differently than if you were to compare this to Magic or X-Wing, which is what it kind of marries, although that comparison really falls short, to be honest. Yeah, it's a miniature game. There's movement, tactics, and combat like X-Wing. You've got the different deck building idea with the cards. You don't really have the ability to set up a combo, which I actually like, because that's one of the things that's cool about Magic, for example, is you can set up combos and do other stuff, but then you can really make the other game feel terrible for your opponent if you have some like sick combo and they're just playing with like a casual deck. Or it's kind of a rock, paper, scissors type of action where it's like, okay, my deck is going to beat your deck, 75, 80% of the time. That's going to be a little bit more difficult to set up here. However, there's still a lot of thought that has to be put into the objective building, the different power cards and all that stuff. And a lot of thought that has to be given to the hand management. There's certain situations where you might effectively want to pass, but you can do that to draw a new power card or discard an objective that you're like, this isn't going to work out. And you try to get a new one and all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of each round, obviously, you can, toss out a whole bunch and kind of reset your hand and hopefully, have something that's a little bit more favorable to what's happening on the battlefield. Now, all of that thought process is all going to happen really when you start building your deck in terms of like what cards do I want to have in here. So I was debating with some of my friends earlier. I was like, those cards that give you score a victory point for objective 5, those are great because they give you early glory points, which then allow you to kind of trigger your engine and build and add those upgrades, which are huge, and it can really kind of mitigate some of the dice in your favor unless you're Stormcast, which you saw earlier. Is it really worth it to do that? I've looked through some of the extra cards here, and there's a lot of like real tricky ones. I'm like, okay, how would I make this work? Because I just, through the few games that I've played, I'm like, that's really difficult. But look, okay, it gives me a lot of victory points. So maybe I can try to work through that and dig, kind of over the course of the game, dig through the deck as I'm playing and say, okay, I'm going to get this card, because it's very easy to go through your objective deck if you really push it. And so you can really kind of work around that and try to do that. And I think a lot of the fun and the kind of the replayability is going to come from, okay, I've got this faction now, I'm going to try to do this. How can I best exploit this faction to do that? And so there's a lot of other things that are really cool, like how you set up the boards. You put the boards up, you can arrange them how you want, you can kind of create choke points, which might be very interesting in terms of like doing support. Like I think, and this is just kind of guessing a little bit of hypothesizing, I think with the Blood Reavers, the Khorne player, setting up a choke point might be very good for kind of piling in bodies and kind of blocking, but then also adding support on your rolls, which gives you a lot more probability to make hits and defense. So that might be an interesting ploy from the perspective of the Khorne player when they go to set up the board, if they can create a choke point. And there is some kind of line of sight and some blocking terrain on the board, and there's some other tokens in here for adding terrain and different objectives. There's like an artifact thing, so you can really kind of mix up kind of the tactics of the board there. So that's really cool. So the kind of those two elements I think are very, very interesting. The deck building side of it, which is really cool. It's really emphasizing that without being too like combo centric, where it's like, I built this sick combo, now, I crushed you, and all that. So it's more of a mitigating tactical kind of combo kind of thing, that you're building a deck that you know what's in there, you're going to be able to get access to this stuff, and you're going to try to plan accordingly based on your movement and stuff like that on the board. And the board setup is cool. The way the dice work is really cool because you have just the one die for attack and defense, but the way you modify that with support, and you can turn hammers into swords and vice versa. There's a lot of manipulation you can just do with that simple kind of unique D6. But yeah, I think folks should be able to really get into this. Now they've come out with the price point of this is $60 US dollars. So you can probably get it for about 50 online and places like that. And then I'm not sure how much the expansions are going to be. They did show some of the expansions. Those are also going to be color-coded miniatures. So if you don't want to paint your miniatures, if you're more of a board gamer and not a miniature player, then you just got to clip them out and stick them together. You don't even have to really glue them. And so that's it. That'll take you, I don't know, probably took me, it was less than an hour to put them together. And I carved off the mold lines and all that stuff, and I did glue them. And it was less than an hour for me to do that, kind of being a little bit more meticulous because I am going to prime them and paint them and all that stuff. So that's cool that the other expansions are coming with kind of color-coded miniatures, and they are going to come with extra cards. So there's going to be faction-specific cards. There's going to be neutral cards in there for sure. So, but it might get into sort of the issue with the X-Wing where it's like, okay, so I've got to buy this new ship because I really want this new pilot card to use with my other ship. So maybe, hopefully, Games Workshop will say, okay, you got the expansion, and then maybe we'll release a little deck of cards, because it'll be easier, I think, for them to release a pack of cards that you can get. So let's say you're not interested in the undead faction, you just want some cards out of it. It might be nice if they actually release the cards only, but yeah, I don't know. I think those expansions are going to be probably $30 to $40 a piece. I couldn't see them being more than 40. And so if you're really into the game, I think $40 is probably reasonable. You'll have a new team, so you can't, I can't see anybody saying, okay, I'm not, whatever I do, I'm not going to play undead or orcs. Maybe, but maybe your buddy can go in and then you've got cards that you can use together, that kind of thing. So I think the price is reasonable. 60 MSRP, $50 online. I try not to talk about price, but there was a rumor going around it was going to be like $70 or $80 for this, and I was like, ooh, that seems pretty steep for this. But thankfully it's 60. And if you look at a game like X-Wing, I think that was like $30, $35 for the base set. But there's way more game in here than there was in the core set of X-Wing. So really with X-Wing, you have to buy the core set plus some expansions or 2 core sets, and then you're right at the same price anyway. So I think there's a lot of replayability just in the base set. If you just want to pick this up and play, Khorne versus Stormcast, and there's a ton of extra cards for deck building, man, I really recommend just doing that and seeing if you like it, because you're going to get a lot of deck building and fun out of this. And like I said, the games play very quickly. You saw a little bit of the luck in this case go against the Stormcast. There's some crucial moments that they failed at, and I don't know that they would have won necessarily if those moments came better for them towards the end of the game. It certainly would have been closer, but that's why you play a best 2 out of 3. And I know this playthrough is probably way longer than an actual game because I'm kind of talking through it and all that stuff. My experience, each game has been less than a half an hour after the first game that I played. But yeah, so you can certainly, once you're in a night of it, you can knock out 3, 4, 5, 6 games of this in a couple hours, no problem. So you're kind of luck of the dice roll, and some of those kind of tactical blunders that you saw me make and talk through, that's going to kind of work itself over the course of a 2 out of 3, definitely as you get better at the game. And I think this is a game that there is going to be some layer of depth there to get better at it, improve at it, and get better about your choices, and a little bit of the metagaming too, in terms of like, okay, he's kind of moving over there, he's probably going to get that objective, he might have an objective card that says he needs to keep me clear of his board. And sometimes I think the board setup might lend itself to like, okay, he set the board up in a certain way, so I feel like he might have some more positional types of objective cards because he's creating choke points and so on. So a lot of that metagaming stuff is really going to come into your decision making, and that's really kind of that elusive part of the game that's hard to describe, other than saying there's a metagame, but there's like a metagame inside the game in terms of what they're doing. You're like, okay, what's he trying to do? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to get the objective? Do they have some other card where like they get points off of charging or whatever? So that all that stuff's going to kind of play into the game. So anyway, that's Warhammer Underworld Shadespire. So definitely take a look at this. I think your X-Wing and your Magic player, maybe your old Warhammer or Warcraft Hero Clicks, what was that? The Warhammer Miniatures game that was real popular like 10 years ago. Those folks are going to love this, I think. So anyway, definitely take a look at this one. Thank you.